The Forgotten Carols. Chapter 1. My name is Constance. When her mother named her Constance, she had no intention of ever calling her Connie. Her mother once explained to her that Constance was a solid name, a name with substance and dignity, but Connie was just fluff. A lot of young girls growing up in her neighborhood would have welcomed a friendly "Hi, Connie" from their friends at school, or, at the very least, would have acknowledged the greeting with a smile. Not Constance. She corrected them resolutely. "My name is Constance," she would say, looking and sounding a bit like a stuffy old librarian. "I am not a Connie." She had that right. She was not then, nor did she ever plan to be, a Connie. If it is possible to be obedient to a fault, Constance was. It never occurred to her that anything her mother ever said was not absolute truth. No advice, counsel, instruction, or observation her mother made was ever challenged. Constance tried in every way to be her mother in miniature. This remarkable devotion was an enormous source of pride for her mother, though Constance never knew it. All she knew was that her mother was never wrong. That wasn't true, of course. Her mother was wrong on just about everything that had anything to do with raising a healthy, well-adjusted only child. She never encouraged her daughter to think or dream or feel or question or wonder or choose or discover anything for herself. She believed it was her job as a parent to control all that for her daughter, and Constance let her. But controlling her daughter's life never compensated Lillian Chamberlain for the loss of control of her own. World War II took her husband. Unsolicited diseases took her health. A letter of condolence from the president took her hope. Though Constance was raised with precious little in the way of emotional nurturing, she received a more than adequate education, her mother's term, thanks to an inheritance left to her by the father she never knew. From the age of 14, she had prepared herself for a practical career in nursing. To fully appreciate what became of Constance, you need to know that she had been a nurse at the regional hospital her entire career. Although she could never be accused of being overly compassionate, she had never shirked her duties or failed to follow a doctor's order to the letter. And she had never, ever questioned or challenged anyone in authority at the hospital. Needless to say, doctors loved her, and patients didn't. It was this absolute commitment to following the voice of authority that placed Constance in an extremely awkward position a few weeks before Christmas. The chief administrator of the hospital called her into his office with a special request. "We have," Mr. Halifax paused, wanting to say this just right, "a special responsibility here at the hospital." Constance sat up straighter in her chair. "This community depends on us to help them when they need us, and to help them with the finest in hospital care requires what?" Constance had learned in earlier private meetings with Mr. Halifax that he didn't really want her to answer these questions. It was just his way of communicating. She knew that what he really wanted was for her to act as if she had the answer on the tip of her tongue, and then he would take everything from there. "That's right, Miss Chamberlain, it requires money." As she had expected, he answered his own question. Then he continued, "And where does this money come from?" "That's right, it comes from patients, or rather from insurance companies of patients." "And what happens when there are difficulties collecting from these companies, Miss Chamberlain?" "You were about to say that we have budget problems, and you're correct." "And how do we overcome these budget shortfalls during these recessionary times?" "Well, we appeal to the very community we are trying to support, and we give them a chance to help us. Are you with me, Nurse Chamberlain?" Few women would have tolerated such a patronizing tone, but Constance was not offended. In some ways, it reminded her of dinner conversations when she was growing up, and so, strangely, she felt right at home. She nodded her agreement much as she had most of her life. "Then you're with me. Good. We have a wonderful opportunity to participate in a goodwill public relations effort that could benefit Regional Hospital enormously, and I need your help." Then something rather odd happened. Mr. Halifax became very excited, like a little boy anticipating a huge gift at Christmas. She had never seen him quite like this before. Mr. Halifax went to his desk and lifted a telegram from a stack of papers. "Listen to this." He could hardly read it, he was so excited. "This comes from the chairman of the board of our parent company. It says a prominent family has expressed interest in making a substantial contribution to the hospital in the new year. They are planning to take their holiday in Europe and will work out details of their gift when they return. They have an aging uncle whom they don't feel they can take with them for various reasons, psychological more than anything. I believe, and I told them we'd be happy to have one of our outstanding nurses care for him through the holidays. This is our opportunity to let the family know how committed we are to excellence in nursing care. Mr. Halifax was almost emotional when he looked up from reading the telegram. Well, Nurse Chamberlain, there you have it. Straight from the chairman of the board. The schedule indicates that your wing, 3 East, is overstaffed this month. And seeing as how you have no family constraints like so many others this time of year, I'd like you to handle this for me. Thank you. He never really looked to see if she had accepted the assignment. He simply handed her an address, a name, and a sketchy medical history. Before she could articulate a response, Mr. Halifax was shaking hands with his next appointment, and his secretary was ushering Constance out the door. It wasn't Constance's nature to defy the authority of Mr. Halifax, not to mention the chairman of the board. But just because she wouldn't have said no, didn't mean she would have chosen on her own to say yes. The assignment she'd just been given made her feel very uncomfortable. During her nurse's training, she'd had to work in every wing in the hospital for a week or two, and the only 2 experiences she had found unbearable were in the psychiatric ward and in the maternity ward. Years before, she had written about those weeks in her journal with uncharacteristic candor. I can't do the babies or the crazies. It's a good thing the nursing profession offers other opportunities, or I fear I'd be forced to work another line of work. The other thing Constance found uncomfortable was working outside the hospital itself. At Regional, everything was sterilized and safe. The patients would come and go, but the beds and the lamps and the furniture never changed. Although she had read articles in trade publications about hospitals that were attracting patients with all sorts of homey interior decorating schemes, she was quite pleased that her hospital remained a stark, white, fully antiseptic environment. By working there, she felt like a real nurse. She wasn't certain she would be viewed as competent while nursing in someone's home. There was some good news, however. With this assignment, she wouldn't have to be involved in all of the Christmas activities that took place at the hospital. She had always thought them a nuisance, and so this December assignment would give her the perfect escape from what she considered the clutter of the holidays. How bad can it be, she thought as she rode the bus home from the hospital. I'll avoid all those people tracking snow down the halls and singing out-of-tune carols. I'll miss those silly staff parties with the gag gifts everyone pretends they're so funny. And for the first time in years, I won't have to deal with the season. I'll have only one man to babysit during the day, and the evenings will be mine. No shift work, no nights. Maybe this is what I've always wanted, a real Christmas vacation. A faint smile came over her face as she thought about this respite from Christmas, not realizing that she was on the eve of the most memorable Christmas she would ever know.